There are people throughout the world that have interesting stories to tell. Stories of heroism, acts of kindness, near-death experiences, successes, and failures. You usually hear of these stories from people that live in another state or country. But what about the stories from within your own community? Everyone has a story to tell. And by everyone, we mean your neighbor, your coworker, the person behind you at church, people you interact with on a daily basis, or maybe even you. Welcome to the DTB podcast presented by Bless Your Heart Nonprofit Corporation. I'm Jeray Jambon Jarreau, Director of Bless Your Heart Nonprofit, and filling in for our regular host, Brennan Matherne. Today we're sitting down with Mr. David Leboeuf, previous owner of Frank's Grocery Store, which had multiple locations in Southeast Louisiana. I, like many people in the South Lafourche area, have many memories shopping the aisles of Frank's Grocery Store with my parents. Mr. David, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, Mr. David, introduce yourself to us.
My name's David Leboeuf. I'm married to Celeste Adams Leboeuf. I have 5 children, Jason, Jill, Brad, Caroline, and Jude.
Big family.
Big family.
Some grandbabies?
Only one left at home. Jude's 14. All the rest are grown. I do have 3 grandchildren. I actually have a granddaughter that's at LSU. And then I have, that's J.C. Leboeuf, and then I have Isabella and Landon.
So, Mr. David, we start off every episode just asking you the typical down-the-bayou question. Who's your mom and dad? Where you grew up? Where you from?
Well, my mom and dad are Frank and Faith Leboeuf. We are originally from Raceland, where my dad used to be a manager of national supermarkets.
And so did you grow up in the Raceland area?
I did until 1978, and my dad had got kind of fed up with the chain store operations and the at that time, national employees were union employees, and everybody in the store was union except the manager. So he got frustrated with his ability to run the store the way he wanted to. So he decided to start looking for his own, to put his stylist to work for himself instead of a chain store.
Wow. I feel like if I would have known that you graduated from Central Lafourche High School, I may not have shopped at Frank's as much. So tell me, what do you think brought your dad to the South Lafourche area?
Well, when he decided to go out on his own, he had a district manager, his district manager at National, that had also left National Food Stores and went to work for a independent grocery wholesaler. And he asked him to see if he could find him a store so he could have on his own. And at that time, Mr. Fred Lafourche, who owned Fred's IGA in Cutoff, next to the Sacred Heart Church in Cutoff, was looking to retire. So Mr. Sonny Hebert was what the guy's name, and he got Mr. Fred and my dad together, and they kind of came up with a deal. So my dad decided he was going to go for it. First place he went was his bank in Raceland, and they basically turned him down flat,
Wow.
to get the money. He needed a total of $50,000 at that time, and they turned him down. So Mr. Fred dealt with State Bank and Trust down here, and he kind of went to bat for my dad, and they agreed to lend him the money. So he ended up getting a loan, and we opened our first store in Cutoff.
So tell our listeners, where was the first Frank's location in South Lafourche?
Well, we call it the Little Green Store. It's right next to, State Bank had a location in Cutoff right next to the Sacred Heart Church and stuff. It's a T-Mobile business now, I think.
Wow.
But that was the first one.
So what year did y'all open?
That was 1978. And then we had bought the equipment and inventory, but we were leasing the building from Mr. Lafourche. And he only gave us a 5-year lease. And after we opened and we started building the business and became successful, Mr. Fred basically told us that at the end of the 5 years that he was sorry he sold, and he was going to take it back. So we had a few years to decide what we were going to do if we wanted to stay in business. So we found a vacant building in Cutoff across from Mommy Joe's in Cutoff. It was a Bayou Auto Parts building that had closed. So we ended up buying that and turned the auto parts store into a grocery store, just in case, Mr. Fred would not release us the building. Well, after we did that, he decided, I'm not going to get back into business, means you open one down the road. So we ended up having two within 2 miles, which wasn't very, an ideal situation, but it was out of necessity that we had two that close together.
Wow.
So that was a decision made, and things got a little tough after that. We opened the first store in 1978, and then the second one was 1981 or 82. But anyway, at that point, we had just borrowed the money to buy the second store, and interest rates were like 13%. The oil field crashed, and Del Champs built a store on each side of us. So the early 80s and mid 80s were some lean years. And then we got what we call our big break, if you want to call it that. National had a store in Larose, and National had 4 stores that they were looking to close. So our wholesaler at the time was Super Value, and Super Value went to National and said, look, if we can get you some of our customers to take these stores, would you be interested in selling them to us? And they did. So actually the 4 was, I think it was Larose, Franklinton, Donaldsonville, and New Roads, Louisiana. So Super Value came to us and asked us if we wanted to take a chance on a store in Larose, and we did, and it worked out pretty good, and it kind of put us on our way.
So tell our listeners, where was the Larose location?
It's in the Bond Service Shopping Center, next to Popeyes and Taco Bell.
So what do you think your dad did, or what did your family do during the 80s that kind of held y'all through those lean years?
Well, we worked it ourselves. My mom worked in the store for little of no pay. So did my dad, and my dad paid me what he thought I needed to live on, basically. So we worked it ourselves, and
wow.
We kept expenses as low as we could, and ended up making it.
So tell me, like, at that time, were y'all I feel now there's this huge push for buying local and buying produce local or buying seafood local. Is that something y'all did initially when y'all first opened up?
Well, I think it's still that way today. Independent grocers are very strong in South Louisiana, unlike a lot of the rest of the country. You look at New Orleans, and down here there's really, other than Walmart, who's not, just a grocery chain, there are no grocery chains in this area. There's no more Winn-Dixies in this area. There's no more Del Champs. There's, no more national food stores. And even in New Orleans, the independent grocer is thriving. You got the Bromarts, Langensteins, the Pardos. New Orleans is dominated by independent grocers, not chains.
Right. So based on your interactions, like in the grocery business, why do you think that is? Like, why do you think people in South Louisiana prefer independent grocers versus chain grocers?
I still think it's the personal reaction with, the owners and the customers. People down here especially you got to give them a reason not to shop with you. They're gonna support you if you give them what they need, and because they want to support you, they want to see their own be successful.
So tell me, like, what do you think? This is a good segue into the next question. What do you think made Frank's set apart from the other maybe stores or grocery stores?
I just think our involvement, in the community, and we always tried to give back as much as we could, and you saw us in the local stores, you saw us at church, you saw us in all places of business, and I think people just like to deal with people they know,
right? So tell us what it was like growing up in a grocery store. I'm sure that's a different experience.
Well, I was 15 years old when we started. I worked in our stores from the first day to the very last day. And I was finishing up my sophomore year at Central Lafourche High School when we bought our first store. And my daddy used to wake me up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and we'd get in the truck, and I'd come down to Bayou, which was foreign to me, foreign area. I'd come and unload the trucks, drive back to Central, go to school, and come back and work the trucks up. So I spent a lot of times in them, even during school, even on Friday nights, Dad, can I go to the football game? Yeah, as soon as all of these groceries are put up and the garbage is taken out, and as soon as you finish your work, you can go to the football game. So he worked with me, but I did have to get the work done.
Yeah. So tell me, like, what do you think? I'm sure I always remember you. I always remember your family being very hands-on in the grocery store. Mm-hmm. Talk to us about, like, your dad's work ethic. Is that, like, what did you learn from him? What did he instill in you? He
instilled in me a very good work ethic. No work was beneath him. In fact, I mean, I've seen him, with a shovel in his hand, if he had a drain clogged or something. Even towards the end, he would let the other people, do the management work, and he stocked groceries till basically his last day in the little store and cutoff that we had. He had pulled away, from the day-to-day stuff, but on truck days he would still go and just work stock. So, because he had gotten to a point that, and this was probably back when we were just starting to scan groceries, okay, because we used to price it with a pricing gun, and, you used to have to download batches and apply batches on the computer. And he says, look, this is for you guys. When the groceries come in, I'm going to put them on the shelf. I'm tired of learning. I'm not learning all this stuff. So, which is kind of how I felt at the end of my career with online groceries. And, we had to set up that platform. And I said, man, this is really not something I want to learn. I'm tired of learning too. So I kind of thought of him at that point, that I had reached that point in my career.
Right. Tell me how it's evolved. You talked about getting into scanning items, but just, from your beginning until, the end, how has the grocery business evolved?
Just like any other business, technology. When we first started, we'd have an order book, and it would have like tear strips on it. So you'd walk with this book throughout your store, and if you needed a case of Blue Runner red beans, you would mark a 1 on the side of the item code, and then when you finished your order, you tore out all the tear strips, and you mailed them or sent them back on the truck to your grocery warehouse, and they would key punch it in, and until at the end when you would, basically, you scan, it's wireless, you hit send, you don't even have to, connect to a phone line anymore. It was just all wireless. So more in, ordering was the biggest change. It's just everything got a lot, depending who you ask, a lot easier.
Right. Tell us, do you, I'm sure running a grocery store for all these years, you definitely have encountered all different kinds of people from all kind of walks of life. Do you remember any like funny or interesting stories that you can think of in the stores?
Well, this is probably not funny, but it's kind of outrageous. And it's not in one of my stores, but I was on the board of directors of our wholesaler, Associated Grocers. And I remember one of the fellow board members telling us, because he was a second generation owner, and he says, "Man, when we was in business back in the day, and my dad would catch a shoplifter, he would bring him in the back and hose him down and throw him in the freezer." So that was probably the weirdest or funniest thing that.
So I take it that
Frank's never did that.
Frank's never did that.
No. Might have wanted to, but we didn't do it.
Talk to us about your time spent with Associated Grocers. Like, what did you hold a position there, and what role they played in Frank's?
Well, to be honest with you, it's probably my only regret in my business is in my career was not because I switched from Super Value, which was a national wholesaler. Associated Grocers has one location in Baton Rouge, and I've always heard of other stores being very of liking them and being very successful with Associated Grocers because they're customer owned.
Wow.
They're owned by the retailers.
Right.
But at that time, Rouse's was a member of Associated Grocers. And Rouse's was my main competitor. So I always felt that, they were bigger than me, and Associated Grocers was going to take care of Rouse's before they took care of Frank's. Mm-hmm. So after Rouse's bought all the A&P stores in New Orleans, they switched warehouses. They left Associated Grocers. So that day, I called Associated Grocers and I switched, which was the best decision I ever made because they understood South Louisiana grocery business better than, because Super Value was headquarters in Minneapolis. So, and they were retailer owned. So you had to buy a minimum amount of stock to get in, to be a member of Associated Grocers. And then after that, you realize the stock appreciation of your investment as Associated Grocers made money, you made money. So, not only made it on the retail end, you made it on the wholesale end. So, after I became a member of Associated Grocers, I began to buy more and more stock of Associated Grocers because I knew it was a solid company. Mm-hmm. When I got enough shares, I was elected to the board of directors and really got to see the inner workings and how solid they were. So when I ended up selling, I had accumulated a good bit of AG stock that helped me.
Wow. So talk to us about that. Let's get into this first. How many different locations did Frank's have throughout the years?
5. We started with the little store. We called it the little green store in Cutoff. Then the second one that came out of necessity in Cutoff. Then the store in La Rose. And then that was 1989. And then in 1992, the DeZalman store, it was a 2 shards, and they had went bankrupt. So I had an uncle, my dad's brother, who was a Golden Flake chip route man. And he told my dad, he says, "Man, they got this little store in the Zalmans. They're closing, they're going bankrupt." He says, I think that little store would be good for you. So we inquired about it, and we ended up buying it out of bankruptcy, which that was bought out of opportunity. Mm-hmm. So then in 1994, Baudouin's supermarket in Lockport came up for sale, and that was another opportunity that we took advantage of and did well there. And then, so that was 94. And then in the late 90s, Swegman's went bankrupt. And a lot of people down by don't know this, but we ended up buying a Swegman's in Laplace. Oh, wow. And we stayed there for 9 years. And then I think it was Gustav, one of the hurricanes, took the roof off of that building. So it was going to take quite a bit of time and work to get it back open. And although it was actually our highest volume store, it came with a share of problems that I wasn't used to dealing with. And city people are a little bit different than country people. And I wasn't, I had a manager that got robbed in the parking lot,
Wow.
So that I didn't want to be responsible for something happening like that. So when the hurricane took the roof off, I had a clause in my lease that I said if I was closed for a certain amount of time because of weather, something I could get out. So I decided to sell that one and come back home. So, and then in the early 2000s, I actually approached Jim Rodriguez in Golden Meadow. He had the Piggly Wiggly in Golden Meadow because there was talk that he was about ready to retire and wanted to get out. So I approached him, and we came up with a deal, and was able to acquire that store, which was a very good acquisition. And then that store ended up, after a couple years being in it, burned to the ground.
Wow.
So immediately we saw it was a total loss. I started looking for property, and I found some property in the back road and began construction on the new Golden Meadow store, and opened that one. And then my lease came up in the LaRose location, and that location had deteriorated. The physical plant had deteriorated. The parking lot was horrible, and nothing was being done about it. So I decided to look for property on the back road in LaRose, which I found what I thought was the ideal spot. Of course, that has changed since they rerouted the traffic.
Right.
You used to be able to come straight off the LaRose Bridge, and it was
Right.
like a funnel into my parking lot. But now they made some, I don't know what you call it, roundabouts or whatever. But
Right.
now you can't go directly in, so it's not quite as attractive. But we built that store, and I'm very proud of the way that turned out.
Absolutely. We so much enjoyed shopping at Frank's as
Thanks.
kids, and we so enjoy that store, even though they rerouted. And I can't say that we don't miss it being Frank's. I think now most people in the LaRose area refer to that Rouse's as the Frouse's because
Yeah.
we miss Frank's so much.
Yeah.
So tell us, eventually, I think it's no secret that you eventually sold some of your locations to Rouse's.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, they actually, it's 2.5 years now that I sold, which went by pretty quick. But 3 years prior to that, they had came to me and wanted to buy me out. And at that time, I was like, 53 years old, and still pretty young. And I didn't think the time was right. But I really thought hard about it because, I started thinking about how I was going to get out because, my children had took, different career paths, and I was kind of concerned of how I was going to get out because I called myself a tweener because I was, too small for a national chain to be interested in me, but I was kind of too big for just an independent person just trying to start out to buy me. So I knew my market to sell was not very good. So when Rouse's first approached me, I thought long and hard about it, but I decided not to do it. So they came back 3 years later, and a little older and a little bit better offer. So I decided to sell. Now they bought the Lockport location, LaRose location, and Golden Meadow location. They did not open the Lockport location. They didn't buy it to keep it open. They wanted to close it so they could kind of corner that market. But they wanted LaRose and Golden Meadow. I was doing quite well there, and I was doing a lot of marine business, and I think that marine business was pretty attractive to them. So when we for them to get it was to buy it. So they ended up buying it. Now, they didn't buy the Zalman store, and I operated that for a short time after I sold, but I didn't sell, the other three to stay in business. So I approached some of my employees, and one of them had an interest in it that I thought had probably the best chance of being successful, and I ended up selling it to her.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And so they still operate.
And they still operate it and doing quite well.
That's wonderful. I think a lot of people from down the bayou travel to Zalman.
I think you're right.
Especially the king cakes.
Yes, they do a phenomenal job with their
really
king cake. They're really getting known regionally, for their king cakes and their bakery in general. And they've actually have a lot of down the bayou people working there.
Really?
Yeah. So quite a few of them that worked in the LaRose store, Golden Meadow store, even Lafourche store are working there. They have several.
So this might be a very guarded secret, and you may have sold it with the stores, but do you have the recipe for the green onion sausage?
It's actually a pre-made mix, and it's actually available to anybody that knows about it. So
really?
it's not that particular recipe is not a Frank's recipe. Now the tarts are.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So,
gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that we didn't grow up in Central Lafourche, but I will say all of my friends from college, they always talked about the fried chicken at the Frank's location in Lockport. So, Mr. David, who do you think, I know that you've talked about working hard over the years, but who else do you think has contributed to Frank's success over the years?
Well, my mom and dad, my dad left National Food Store when he was 39 years old. He still had 3 children at home. It didn't have, a whole lot of money by any means. And he took a risk, and he risked it all to open up and follow his dream, of opening up his own store. And my mom, who had not worked outside the home, went to work and supported him 100%. And she worked hard. So, I've learned a lot, over the years, and I got to a point to where, I was going to be successful on my own. And I started building up some equity, and the risks started becoming smaller and smaller. But I don't know if I'd ever had the courage to do what he did.
Right.
So.
What a good example.
Yeah. And the community that supported us. It was just, even from the beginning, we were outsiders. We were from Raceland, and from the very beginning, they supported us, and we're very, very grateful for that.
Talk to me about your employees. I'm sure you've had some devoted people over the years.
I did. Our employee retention was very good, especially at the top. We had several people that worked for us 20, 25, 30 years. So that was probably the hardest part about selling, having to notify those people that I was gone. And, some of them, well, quite a few of them followed the new owners in the Zalmans, and they're still working for Frank's, because the new owner asked me if I would basically include the name Frank's in our sale, which I did, because I knew she would honor it.
Right.
Well, in fact, she has a picture of my mom and dad in the store.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so as the owners, as the founders, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
I definitely believe it was always comforting to know that we knew our grocers growing up. Like, we knew who they were. They knew us. They knew our names. They knew our parents. They'd ask us how we were doing.
Yeah. And that's how we competed.
Right.
With the Walmarts.
That personal element.
That's all we had. We certainly didn't have the buying power and the corporate structure they had. And that's all we had. We had our name and our service and our personalities and our work ethic, and that's how we made it.
So, Mr. David, now that you're out of the grocery business, what does the future hold for you? What does retirement look like?
Well, I'm playing golf. I love to play golf. My youngest son, Jude, is an avid golfer and doing quite well, so we travel a lot with him. I do a little fishing. Celeste, my wife, is still actually at work. She's got a little bit of time left in the Lafourche Parish school system. So, and Jude's only 14, so he's keeping us busy. So, enjoying it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I can definitely say that our community's been blessed. You've employed hundreds of people up and down Bayou Lafourche, and you've provided us with, just memories, very sentimental memories that we have with our families, just, shopping at Frank's and always having that friendly face there. You've been blessed with wonderful employees over the years. So for that, we thank you. So at the end of every episode, we have a round of rapid-fire questions related to life on the bayou. You can give us a one-word answer or expand on the answer if you feel the need to explain. It's really up to you. So are you ready?
Yes.
What is your go-to order at a down-the-bayou restaurant?
Hamburger steak.
That actually is my choice as well. So
I won't say which one, but hamburger steak.
So, potato salad, in the gumbo or on the side?
On the side.
Jambalaya, red or brown?
Red.
What is your favorite Cajun French word or phrase and its meaning?
I'm not sure if it's a Cajun phrase or just slang, but shaws.
So, for our listeners, what does that mean?
It means anything that you don't know the correct word for.
What is your favorite snowball flavor?
Coconut.
And when a boat is passing and you're in the core, is the bridge open or closed?
Open.
That's exactly what I'll say as well. Okay, well, that'll do it for this episode of the DTB podcast. Thanks to our guest, Mr. David Leboeuf. We sincerely appreciate your time. You can subscribe to the DTB podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at the DTB Podcast. You can also follow Bless Your Heart Nonprofit on Facebook or Twitter at BYH Nonprofit. You can donate to Bless Your Heart at Venmo at Bless Your Heart Nonprofit or on PayPal at blessyourheartnonprofit@gmail.com. That'll wrap it up for this episode of the DTB podcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe button for our next episode. Until then, this is Jeray Jambon Jarreau. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.